Shalom, my friends. Right now in America, millions of people are trapped in what I call the waiting room of poverty. Credit card debt has reached $117 trillion, inflation has eroded purchasing power by over 20% in just 3 years, and 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. But here's what breaks my heart most. Many believers are sitting still, praying for a breakthrough, waiting for God to make a way while their financial situation crumbles around them. They're waiting for the perfect job to fall from heaven, the ideal business opportunity to knock on their door, or a sudden miracle to erase their debt. But the Torah reveals something revolutionary that most American Christians never learned in church. God doesn't reward passivity, He rewards action. Throughout the entire Torah, from Genesis to Deuteronomy, there's a divine pattern so consistent it cannot be ignored. God opens doors for those who are already moving. He parts seas for those who step into the water first. He multiplies resources for those who take the first step with what little they have. The Hebrew Scriptures are filled with a principle that directly contradicts the sit-and-wait mentality that has paralyzed so many American households financially. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how this ancient wisdom can transform your financial reality in modern America. The difference between financial breakthrough and continued struggle isn't about how much faith you have, how many hours you pray, or how desperately you need the money. The difference is in understanding this. God responds to movement, not to desperation. In the next several minutes, I'm going to walk you through 6 profound truths from the Torah that will completely revolutionize how you approach your finances, your career, your business, and your economic future. This isn't motivational fluff. This is divine architecture for prosperity that has worked for thousands of years, and it will work for you too if you're willing to act on it. Let me paint you a picture that's probably too familiar. You wake up in your American home, you check your bank account, and that knot forms in your stomach again. The bills are piling up. Your savings account is laughing at you with its embarrassingly low balance. You've been praying for months, maybe years, for God to provide, to open doors, to make a way where there seems to be no way. You've been a faithful person. You've tithed when you could. You've been to church. You've declared scriptures over your finances, but nothing is changing. And deep down, there's a growing frustration, maybe even anger, because you're doing everything you think you're supposed to do spiritually, but financially, you're still drowning. You're waiting for God to move. But what if I told you that God is waiting for you to move? The Torah reveals something about divine provision that shatters the American church's sit and wait for your blessing theology. In Deuteronomy 28:12, God promises to open the heavens, the storehouse of His bounty, for His people. But look at the context. This promise comes after 11 verses describing actions: obedience to commandments, work, diligence, and faithful stewardship. The blessing doesn't come to those who are idle. It comes to those who are already in motion, already working the field, already engaged in productive activity. The Hebrew word for work in Torah is avodah, which also means worship and service. The very structure of the language reveals this truth. Your work is your worship, and God blesses the work of your hands, not the emptiness of your waiting. When you're paralyzed by fear, by analysis paralysis, by waiting for the perfect moment, you're actually operating outside of the divine design for provision. Here's the brutal truth about financial waiting in America today. While you're waiting, interest is compounding on your debt. While you're waiting, opportunities are passing you by. While you're waiting, inflation is eating away at whatever little you have saved. While you're waiting, younger, less qualified, less spiritual people are taking action and getting the results you're praying for. The cost of inaction in the American economy is staggering. Every month you delay starting that side business, someone else captures that market share. Every week you postpone asking for that raise, you lose hundreds of dollars. Every day you wait to learn that new skill, you fall further behind in an economy that's moving at digital speed. God cannot bless hands that aren't working. He cannot multiply resources that aren't being planted, and He cannot open doors for people who aren't walking toward them. The Torah opens with the most profound demonstration of divine action. In the beginning, God created. Not God waited, not God hoped, not God prayed about it. God acted. The first characteristic we learn about the divine is that he is a God of action, of creation, of movement. Genesis 1 is essentially a chapter of divine productivity, and then, remarkably, God creates humanity in his image. What does that mean practically? It means we are created to be sub-creators, action takers, builders, and workers. The very fact that you were made in the image of an action-taking God means that passivity is contrary to your divine design. When you sit idle, waiting for heaven to solve problems you have the capacity to address, you're actually violating your created purpose. Look at how God operates throughout the Torah. When the Israelites are trapped at the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army charging behind them, what does God say to Moses? Does he say, "Pray harder"? Does he say, "Have more faith and wait"? No. In Exodus 14:15, God says something that should revolutionize how you approach every financial obstacle. "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward." Think about that. They're facing an impossible situation, water in front, army behind. And God's response is essentially, stop praying and start moving. Then, and only then, when Moses raises his staff and the people start walking, God parts the sea. The miracle doesn't happen during the prayer meeting. It happens during the movement. This is the divine pattern. God responds to forward motion, not to static desperation. This principle is woven throughout the entire Torah. When Abraham is called to become the father of nations, God doesn't deliver the promise to him while he's comfortable in Ur. God says, "Lech lecha," go forth. Genesis 12:1. The blessing is released when Abraham takes the first step into the unknown. When Jacob is fleeing from Esau, God doesn't appear to him while he's paralyzed in fear. God meets him at Bethel after he's already on the journey. Genesis 28. When Joseph is in prison, God doesn't break him out supernaturally while Joseph sulks in his cell. Joseph acts, he interprets dreams, he serves excellently, he networks with the cupbearer, and then God opens the door to Pharaoh's palace. Genesis 41. The pattern is undeniable. Divine intervention follows human initiation. God is not opposed to miracles, but he consistently partners with people who are already in motion, already taking steps, already working with what they have. There's a mystical principle in Jewish wisdom called arousal from below precedes arousal from above. In simple terms, heaven moves when earth moves first. God is constantly ready to pour out blessing, provision, and breakthrough, but he's waiting for a human signal that you're ready to partner with him. Think of it like this. God has the resources, the connections, the opportunities, and the miracles already prepared for you. But he won't force them into your life while you're sitting on your couch binge-watching Netflix and complaining about your financial situation. The moment you take action, even imperfect, messy, scared action, you send a signal to heaven that says, "I'm ready, I'm serious, I'm willing to partner with you in my breakthrough." Let me give you a modern American example of how this works. I know a man in Texas who was $75,000 in debt, working a job he hated, and praying desperately for God to provide a way out. For 2 years, nothing changed. Then one day, something shifted in him. He decided to stop waiting and start acting. He spent his evenings after work learning digital marketing through free YouTube videos. He created a simple service offering and reached out to 50 local businesses. Within 3 months, he had his first client paying him $2,000 a month. Within a year, he had replaced his full-time income and was on his way to paying off his debt. Here's the key. God didn't send an angel with a check for $75,000. God didn't make his boss suddenly double his salary. Instead, God responded to his action by opening doors of opportunity, giving him favor with clients, and blessing the work of his hands. The provision was always available, but it required movement to activate it. The Torah teaches this principle through the concept of hishtadlut, the requirement for human effort before divine assistance. In Proverbs 6:60-11, we're instructed to observe the ant, who works diligently without a supervisor, storing provision for the future. The text doesn't say, observe the grasshopper who prays for food. It says, observe the ant who acts. In Deuteronomy 8:18, God says he gives you the power to produce wealth. But notice, he doesn't give you the wealth directly. He gives you the power, ability, strength, opportunity to produce it. This means your role is essential. God's not going to violate this divine partnership by doing your part for you. When you take action, even small action, you activate spiritual laws of multiplication, favor, and divine assistance that remain dormant during seasons of passivity. This is why two people can have the same faith, the same prayers, the same needs, but radically different results. The difference is always action. One of the most damaging lies circulating in American Christian culture is the idea that there's a perfect timing for everything, and your job is to wait until you feel God's leading before taking action. This sounds spiritual. It sounds humble. But it's actually a recipe for perpetual poverty and missed opportunity. The Torah doesn't teach this kind of paralysis by analysis approach to life. Ecclesiastes 11:4 says, whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. This is ancient Hebrew wisdom demolishing the wait for perfect conditions mentality. If you're waiting for the perfect moment to start, you'll never start. If you're waiting until you have all the information, all the resources, and all the certainty, you'll die waiting. Let me tell you what perfect timing has cost people in America. There are millions of Americans who had the idea to start an online business in 2010 but waited for the right time. They missed the entire e-commerce explosion. There are people who wanted to invest in real estate in 2011-2012 when properties were dirt cheap after the housing crisis, but they waited for more clarity. They missed generational wealth building opportunities. There are people who had the skill and opportunity to switch careers into tech 5 years ago, but waited to be sure it was God's will. They're now stuck in outdated industries while tech workers are making six figures. The cost of waiting for certainty is enormous. And here's what the Torah teaches. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction every single time. God can steer a moving ship. He can't steer a ship that's still docked at the harbor. The story of Moses at the burning bush illustrates this perfectly. Moses gives God every excuse in the book. Who am I? What if they don't believe me? I'm not eloquent. Please send someone else. Exodus 3-4. He's waiting for the perfect feeling, the perfect qualification, the perfect circumstances. And God essentially says, stop making excuses. Go, I'll be with you. You'll figure it out along the way. Moses wasn't ready. He didn't feel ready. He wasn't perfect. But God didn't need him to be ready. God needed him to be willing to move. The same is true for your finances. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need perfect market conditions. You need to take the next step with what you have, where you are, trusting that God partners with movement. Your obedience in motion is more powerful than your perfection in stillness. Let's look at specific biblical examples where action, not waiting, triggered divine breakthrough. First, consider the story of the widow with the oil in 2 Kings 4. She's in desperate financial straits, about to lose her sons to creditors. She comes to Elisha the prophet in crisis. Does Elisha tell her to go home and pray and wait for a miracle? No. He tells her to take action. Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. 2 Kings 4:3. Then he instructs her to pour the little oil she has into those jars. The miracle of multiplication doesn't happen while she's crying and praying. It happens while she's acting, gathering jars, pouring oil, working with what little she has. The supernatural provision was directly proportional to her willingness to act in faith. This is how God operates. He multiplies what you move, not what you hoard. Second, look at the feeding of the 5,000 in John 6. Jesus has a massive crowd to feed and seemingly no resources. The disciples want to send everyone away, the passive approach, but Jesus asks, "What do you have?" They find a boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish, laughably insufficient for the need. But here's the key. Jesus doesn't create food out of thin air. He takes what they bring to him, what they put into action, and then he multiplies it. The boy had to be willing to give up his lunch. The disciples had to be willing to distribute what seemed inadequate. The miracle happened in the middle of their obedience to act, not before it. How many Americans are sitting on their 5 loaves and 2 fish? A skill, an idea, a connection, a resource, waiting for it to become enough before they offer it to God? You'll wait forever. Give God what you have, put it into motion, and watch him multiply it. Third, consider Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, Nehemiah 2-6. He doesn't sit in Persia praying for the walls to supernaturally reconstruct themselves. He takes action. He mourns. He prays. But then he makes a plan. He approaches the king. He requests resources. He travels to Jerusalem. He organizes the workers. He divides the labor. And he works while facing opposition. The walls are rebuilt in 52 days, not because of a miracle, but because of organized, faithful, persistent action backed by divine favor. God gave Nehemiah favor with the king. Action brought favor. God protected the workers from enemies. Action attracted protection. God provided materials. Action opened supply. Every element of divine provision came as a response to Nehemiah's bold initiative. This is the pattern. God partners with action takers. If you're facing a broken financial situation, a crumbling career, or a destroyed dream, stop waiting for a lightning bolt and start laying one brick at a time. God will meet you there. Now let's get supremely practical. Based on Torah wisdom, here are concrete actions you can take this week to activate God's provision in your finances. First, audit and act on your assets. Take an inventory of what you already have. What skills do you possess that you're not monetizing? What relationships do you have that you're not leveraging? What physical possessions do you own that you could sell or rent? What knowledge do you have that others would pay for? The widow had oil. The boy had bread and fish. What do you have? Don't focus on what you lack. Focus on what you have and put it into motion. If you can write, start offering copywriting services. If you can fix things, start a handyman business on the side. If you understand social media, help local businesses with their marketing. Do something with what you have today, not someday. Second, take the smallest possible action toward your biggest goal. If you want to start a business but feel overwhelmed, don't try to launch a complete company this week. Just take one small step. Register the domain name, create the LLC, design the logo, write the first blog post, make the first cold call. The Torah principle is clear. God doesn't part the entire sea while you're on the shore. He parts it as you step into the water. Joshua 3:13-16. When the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant stepped into the Jordan River, the water didn't part until their feet touched the water's edge. The miracle begins at the point of action. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take the next step. Set a goal to take one small, concrete action every single day toward your financial goal. In 30 days, you'll have 30 actions completed, and you'll be shocked at how much momentum that creates and how many doors open. Third, give God something to multiply by investing in yourself and others. The Torah teaches the principle of sowing and reaping, Leviticus 19:9-10, Deuteronomy 15-10. You cannot reap what you don't sow. In the American context, this means invest in your education, invest in learning new skills, invest in networking, invest in mentorship, and invest in generosity. Take some of the little you have and sow it into your own development. Maybe that's $50 for an online course that teaches you a valuable skill. Maybe it's $100 to attend a networking event in your industry. Maybe it's buying coffee for someone who's where you want to be and picking their brain. Maybe it's giving $20 to someone in greater need than you, activating the law of divine reciprocity. God cannot multiply zero. He cannot multiply what you keep clutched in your fist. But when you open your hand, whether through giving, investing, or working, you position yourself for supernatural multiplication. Take action this week, not next month, not when you feel ready, not when you have more money, this week, because the God of the Torah responds to movement, and your breakthrough is on the other side of your obedience to act. My friends, if there's one thing I want you to walk away with today, it's this profound truth. God has already prepared your breakthrough, but it requires your participation to activate it. The doors are already there. The opportunities are already available. The resources are already allocated in heaven, but they won't manifest in your life through passive waiting. They manifest through active faith, faith that works, faith that moves, faith that dares to step into the water before the sea parts. The American dream of success isn't just about hard work for work's sake. It's about aligning your work with divine principles, understanding that when you move in faith, heaven moves in power. Your financial situation doesn't have to define your future. What defines your future is the decision you make right now to stop waiting and start walking. The Torah's wisdom is clear and uncompromising. Action unlocks divine blessing, movement attracts divine intervention, and work done in faith becomes the very arena where God demonstrates His power. Think about where you are right now. Think about the financial pressure, the stress, the fear. Now imagine where you could be 6 months from now if you took action every single day based on what you learned today. Imagine the debt you could eliminate, the income you could generate, the opportunities you could create, the peace you could experience. That future is available to you, but it's not going to chase you down while you're sitting still. You have to chase it. You have to pursue it. You have to work for it. And when you do, when you take that first scary, faith-filled step, you'll discover that God has been waiting for you to move all along. He's been ready to bless, ready to provide, ready to open doors. He was just waiting for a signal that you were serious, that you were ready, that you were willing to partner with Him in your own breakthrough. So here's my challenge to you, my friends. Before this video ends, before you close this tab and go back to your regular life, I want you to commit to one specific action you're going to take in the next 24 hours toward your financial breakthrough. Just one. Write it down. Speak it out loud. Make it concrete and measurable. Maybe it's updating your resume. Maybe it's calling that potential client. Maybe it's learning the first module of a new skill. Maybe it's selling that thing you don't need anymore. Whatever it is, commit to it right now. Because the difference between the person you are today and the person you could be tomorrow is simply this: action. The key that unlocks growth is already in your hand. The question is, will you turn it? Shalom, and may the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob bless the work of your hands as you step forward in faith.